Roger, we're talking about your betting. So how big a punter are you personally now?
How big a punter am I? I bet, usually bet to £50 a point, and I don't bet every day. If I have a 4-pointer, I may occasionally up that to £100 a point. I only bet singly now, usually each way, because that's where I go. That's the value for me. The days of me doing multiples have long since gone, because whilst some people do hit the jackpot, I soon learnt that the companies like Betfred give you a 100% bonus if you get a winning Yankee, which tells you all you want to know. The chances of getting four big prize winners up are pretty remote. So I stick to betting singly. Okay, I may have a Yankee for the Cheltenham Festival or Royal Ascot or something of that sort, but £50 a point, and that's where I usually go.
So I'm assuming that you get bad losing runs. How do you deal with them psychologically?
Oh, you get bad losing runs whether you are a punter, a tipster, a bookmaker. Bookmakers get bad losing runs. Suddenly all their punters win week after week. You have to stick to your principles, patience and discipline, and the greatest danger when you're having a losing run, which really, really hurts, is changing your strategy, and that's fatal. You simply have to stick where you are. I do have a week break, 2 weeks break. I've been known to have a 3-week break, because that helps stop the rot. It clears the mind, and when I'm doing that, I don't follow racing. I don't look at results, because that hurts even more. Something that you would be going to back is sure to win when you have a quiet spell. So that's how I deal with the losing runs, but no pretending they hurt. And in the old days, they didn't hurt because I didn't keep any records. So I used to kid myself that, hey, well, I've had a 10-to-1 winner and I had 50 quid, that's 500 quid. The fact I'd lost 1,500 quid the previous 2 weeks didn't enter the equation because I had no record of it.
Now, it must be more difficult for you having bad losing runs because you're one of those most maligned characters in racing. You're actually a tipster as well. So how do you deal with angry clients when you've tipped up a loser or a series of losers?
Yeah, the tipping interest, that started a long time ago, Simon, when I was approached by the Sunday Independent, that's the West Country Sunday Independent, to do a weekly article in the Sunday paper, and I started doing that, and started putting forward a few horses in that article, and they started winning. And then I started doing a tipping line, which was a premium rate, and soon realised that was a pretty horrific way of doing things, because if you tipped a winner and some poor bloke that was following you didn't ring that morning, he wasn't very chuffed when you were announcing this 20-to-1 winner the following day, when he neither had the time or the inclination to ring you the previous day. And also it was so difficult in a newspaper trying to predict winners for the coming week, and I have great sympathy with the racing tipsters and people like Price Rise, Tom Seagal, because they have to look at specific races. Tom has to look at the big handicaps on a Saturday. He has to find 1 or 2 horses. He has to find them virtually 24 hours before the race is run. So there's changes in going and changes in jockeys and some non-runners, and life is very difficult. So I have the greatest sympathy with him. And I never put a tip up, or very, very seldom do I put a tip up before 9:30 the morning of the racing, because I certainly want to know what non-runners have come along, because that can have a huge influence on the value in the race, particularly if it's one of the shorter price favourites that have been withdrawn.
Well, something everybody wants to know, especially the Twitter trolls who seem to keep nice and busy. If you're so bloody clever, why do you have to sell your tips?
A very sound question. I do it, Simon, because I enjoy it. I don't see myself selling tips. I provide a service. The subscribers I have, the vast majority have been with me a very, very long time. They are disciplined guys. I send them the tips by text and follow it up with a pretty detailed narrative email later that morning. So I don't simply say horse A is going to win. I give a full explanation as to why I think it's got a good chance. I only ever tip one horse in a race. I think you can spread your risk in these big handicaps, but I tend to put my money where my mouth is and go for just the one horse. Why do I charge for it? Because I provide a service. It doesn't make me a huge living, but it buys the odd bottle of wine for me. And I'm not just tipping a horse and saying horse A. I am providing a service. I have a two-way relationship with a lot of my subscribers who email me, and I reply to them, and I enjoy it. And the other thing, Simon, it's an ego trip. It's great when you get an email from subscribers when you've tipped a 20-1 winner and they say, "Wow, thanks very much." And in the past I've had bottles of cases of wine sent to me and all the rest of it. And I had one guy once saying that I'd paid his mum a mortgage. At the other end of the scale, when you have the losing run, you get some pretty fierce emails, particularly from people that have joined you relatively recently and don't appreciate you have losing runs. That can be very difficult, and I have a sense of responsibility because these guys are putting their money down on the basis of the information I've sent them. Okay, they're adults and they can make their own choices, but I'm a human being, and I do feel some responsibility when we have a bad losing run. And last year I had the worst losing run I'd had in my life. Don't ask me why. We still ended up making a profit, but these things happen, and sometimes when your luck is out, oh my goodness, it's out. Horses fall with the race at their mercy, or all sorts of things happen. And equally, trainers have that sort of bad luck. Jockeys do. The Racing Post carries the columns of cold trainers and cold jockeys. It doesn't carry the cold tipsters, but if there was a column for cold tipsters, I would be in it sometimes, that's for sure.
I'm assuming that you, like the other successful punters I've talked to, have difficulty getting your bets on. How do you get around that?
Yes, yes, I had accounts closed in the past, and I've got to be careful what I say now, otherwise I'll have others closed. But I don't have accounts closed now, and the reason I don't is that when I have a win on the horses, I bet with bookmakers, online bookmakers that have poker rooms, and to be honest, I transfer the winnings from the racing pot into the poker wallet, and then I go onto a cash game a couple of days later and play there for an hour, lose a few bob, and then take the money out of my poker wallet into my bank account. Now that is probably close those accounts as from tomorrow, so be it. But most of my betting now is done through on-course bookmakers. There are some really good independents out there that will take bets. They will tell you exactly what they'll stand. Most of them will stand you to lose £1,000, some as low as 500. You may say that's not a lot of money, but this is taking single bets, And if you've got four or five bookmakers that will lay you to lose £1,000, that means you can win £4,000 or £5,000 just simply by ringing those guys up. But it is a personal contact. I actually ring them on the course, wherever they may be standing. Some of them have small betting shops somewhere. Some of them are just, as well as being on course, some are just on course bookmakers. But it's a myth to say that on-course bookmakers won't take bets. Far from it. And I think that's a part of the industry that's going to grow. We're going to go through huge changes in the next 2 or 3 years, as indeed we have in the last 10 years. But betting on racing is going to go through a major change, that's for sure.